Continuing our Linux distro journey, in the previous session I've shown you what are those components that make up a Linux distro. In this one I will show you what options do you have for each of those important components. The first component that I've shown you was the kernel. Here you have a couple of options, but 90% of the time you will be using the Linux kernel, maybe the FreeBSD, but it's not so common. Linux is 90% of this market. The second most, or maybe the most important component that I would say you need to focus on early on is the package management, or the package, sorry, manager. And the two most important options here would be RPM for Red Hat systems. It stands for Red Hat Package Management, and it has a suite of tools for package management, RPM being the main one. And the other very big option would be DPKG, Debian Package Management. There are other options also, but if you know these two ones, you can say you are pretty much covered. The next important option, equal important as this one, would be the repository manager. In the old times, repository managers did not exist. This is not new, of course, but they only had the package management. You needed to download your packages and install them manually with these tools. These files for RPM would have the extension RPM, and these other ones would have the extension deb. So the way you would do it would be download your deb or RPM package and then install it. Now for the modern distributions we are using repository managers, and here we also have specifics. We have the YUM, or Yellow Dog Update Manager, I think it stands for something like that, which recently was or is being replaced by DNF, but they work pretty much the same. So YUM or DNF can be considered as the same thing, and this is for the Red Hat based operating systems or distros. And for the Debian part, you have the Aptitude, which has a tool which is called like this, apt, or there is actually a suite of tools. You might know about apt get or apt cache, something like that. Anyway, this is for Debian. So I would say that if you know these two components, you can go a very long distance with Linux administration. It's very important to be comfortable with package and repository management. So this is this. Another important component would be the graphical environment. Graphical environment. All right. So here, the graphical environment of Linux, it's quite complex, and All of these graphical environments are based on a graphical server, which used to be, for all the distributions, used to be Xorg, but now is being replaced by Wayland. The graphical server is not a variable, actually. All the distributions are pretty much using the same graphical server. Uh, the actual ones are using, almost all of them are using Wayland. The variable part is the desktop environment, let's say. And this desktop environment can have multiple components. It can have window manager, uh, various apps, session management, and also this graphical login, which is called display manager. And usually all of these components of the desktop environment are packaged under a name like GNOME or KDE. These are the two main options that you have for the desktop environment. Now, same as with the Linux distro, this desktop environment has all kinds of variations. So for GNOME, you have multiple versions like GNOME 1, 2, and 3. The actual version is GNOME 3. And there are all kinds of forks from GNOME, like Mate, or I don't know, whatever. Um, it's important to know that the difference from, and the philosophy difference from GNOME and for GNOME and KDE. KDE looks more like a traditional Windows environment with a start bar and desktop shortcuts, while GNOME has a different approach. You need to see them and play a bit with them to get a feel for them. Right. So other than this, there can be also all kinds of components here in the desktop side. You need to take into account also the file management, the file explorer, right? And for example, KDE comes with a file manager called Dolphin, I think, while GNOME, I don't even remember although I use it on a daily basis, but I don't remember right now the name of the file manager from GNOME. Doesn't matter so much. All right, let's go to another slide and discuss some more about things that differentiate these Linux distros. You will see that there are distributions, rolling distributions versus stable distributions. The stable distro is a distro that is updated at a much slower rate than the rolling distribution. The rolling distribution is updated maybe even daily or at a couple of days. Personally, I prefer stable. I'm not so much into experimenting with new features and things like this. The problem with stable distro is that you might you might find yourself in a situation where you need a newer version of a library like PHP. For example, you need PHP 7.4, and your stable distro only offers PHP 7.3 as the latest version of PHP. So you need to find a way to, you will not find it in the official repository. So you need to find a way to install a newer version of PHP, or the same with Maria, the database system, MariaDB. These are just two of the most common examples that you find with stable distros. But it really isn't a big problem. If you do a simple search on Google, you will most definitely find procedure or tutorial on how to install the latest version of PHP or something else that you need. Um, Another differentiator or characteristics, you will find the term enterprise, distro versus non-enterprise, right? And before proceeding with this, let me give you also a couple of examples. Here in the rolling side, the most um, the, the best example that I have in mind now is Arch Linux. Manjaro. mm, I don't know. Um, there are quite a few of them. I don't know them by heart. As I told you, I'm not so much into this type of distros. On the stable side, you can have anything. Uh, Debian, Red Hat, Fedora, whatever. Now, coming to this enterprise versus non-enterprise, there are distributions like Red Hat or SUSE Enterprise or Oracle, CentOS, not anymore since the beginning of this year, 2022. Why are these distros called enterprise? Because they have it's also a Linux distribution, but they they have a better quality check on their releases, and they offer like a warranty, let's say, that you will not get in trouble, uh, like having a security breach or slow performance or something like that with their distros. But no one keeps you from using whatever Linux distro. I mean, you can run on a web server or on an enterprise distro, but probably it will run the same on a non-enterprise Linux distro like Debian, sorry, or Linux Mint or whatever. Other things that I want to talk to you about uh, on this topic, you've seen that and also in the previous session that there are distros that are based on other distros. So you've seen that, for example, you have Red Hat, and there's a family tree from this one with Fedora and CentOS and whatever. What this means is that there's another group that is using the sources of the official of the originating distros, and they are repackaging everything, maybe putting up repository of their own, and package all these things in their own distribution. Maybe configure a couple of things differently, but they depend on the originating distro. So, like for example, CentOS, it depends on Red Hat, and if at some point Red Hat doesn't offer anymore their their packages, their sources, is not the case. But anyway, um, this is how things are working with basing your distro on other distro. So I don't know what else to tell you at this point. I think it's quite enough.